Welcome everyone to Contemporary Issues Sunday School class. What a terrific crowd. We have 45 or 50 folks here, about our max in this room. But that's right. Because they're all planning to move or thinking of moving, or we're at that stage in life. We are pleased today to have Jim Holmes and his colleague Sam Erickson with us to talk about that very issue. Is the retirement home move appropriate for us? How do you make those decisions? When is the right time to make those decisions? And we want to welcome Don and Ron and Angie, folks who recently moved in to retirement centers, and they'll tell us a little bit about that too. So thank you for being here for this topic. I'm Steve, for anybody who doesn't know me, organizer of the class. And if you're not on our weekly email list to find out about our topics, give me your email address afterwards and be glad to add you on. Before we get started, our usual announcements. Zoomers, nice to have you on the internet with us. Please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not talking, so we keep the background noise down. And also, everybody, please mute your cell phones to be in silent mode. That will help. And we are recording this, video recording this for future playback on YouTube for folks who want to watch it later, or it cannot be here today. So with that, also, we want your comments today, your questions. There will be plenty of time for that, for Jim and Sam. And please remember to keep them brief and speak up loud so we can hear you. And we want to hear part of your story, but we don't want to hear a 20-minute story about your experience in particular. We don't have too much time for that today. With that, any other announcements or things today that we want to talk about? I want to give a plug to the sermon today. I thought it was really insightful by Rev Amy about the Jesus walking on the water story. And one thing she said was that stories like that can be taken literally or not, and that it's only since the 1500s, the Protestant Reformation, that really people have been focused on taking those kind of stories completely literally, that they happen. Otherwise, they're symbolic and have a great message, but a lot of the early people did not take them as literally, factually happening the way they're described. So find out more about that, watch the sermon. And we want to pray too for Israel and the Palestinians both this week. What a sad situation in the world. And so,
and
Ukraine, we don't want to forget about Ukraine. Very hot war there still too. And so many challenges in this country and in our House of Representatives in the United States. No shortage of contemporary issues for us to discuss here, but we can't do it all today. So with that, I want to welcome Jim Holmes, longtime St. Andrew member, realtor since 1976, when he grew up in the St. Joe, Missouri area, and was president of his board of realtors there, moved here in '93, I believe. And Sam, his colleague at Kiker Realtors. And Sam Erickson, where'd you come from?
Chicago area.
Chicago area, okay. And I want to introduce Don also, and Ron Grout in the middle, and Angie on the side. So thank you for being here. Okay, with that, I'm going to give the microphone to Jim, and we're going to have a little 2-minute video that shows Ron and Angie and a few other St. Andrew members telling some of the key things they thought about in making the move to a retirement center.
Thank you, Steve. We want this to be as interesting.
There you go. Hold it up close.
Where it says on?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
hold it up close.
Can you hear me in the back?
There we go.
We really appreciate everybody's attendance today. I know this can be the best program possible when you all are asking questions. And so we would invite you to pass any information along to us right now. We'll write it on the board, and hopefully we'll get all those questions answered for everybody, and we'll stay afterwards as well if you have any other questions additionally. But I'd be glad to go ahead and write some of the questions already. Katie, I think you mentioned a question when we were walking down the hall. Can I write that up, or you mentioned that so we can, the rest of the group will hear it as well?
I just was wondering if there was a benefit to a buy-in, like at the Holly Creek, Windfest, yeah, versus going month to month.
Okay, I'll write that down shortly. Additionally, as I mentioned, walking down the hall, we're not here to give any specific financial counsel to anyone. Most of the senior communities are more than happy to do that. I would refer you to your tax accountants or CPAs and things like that to get accurate information. That would be most objective, I should say. So I'll write that question down. Can you hear me in the back there? I'll just keep it real close. Any other questions as well? Steve?
The advantages and disadvantages of the different kinds of memberships that may be included, specifically whether or not that it's a professional organization that's running it, or whether or not that it's you bought into a community and the community manages all the decisions that are being made.
Like a co-op.
A co-op.
Like
The differences.
cooperative, which
Thank you.
Don will be here and able to share his story here shortly about the village cooperative. I'm actually Don's neighbor, and I can share with you how we came to join the cooperative of villages. Here soon.
Hello, so my name is Sam Erickson, as said, and if you come up with questions throughout, raise your hand, ask the question. We could either address it then, or we'll put it up on the board and address it before the meeting's out. So don't feel compelled that you have to have a question at this very moment. I've been in real estate for about 6 years as a realtor, and before that, I was a banker for about 25 years, and it was involved in thousands of transactions on the lending side, and the mortgage side, and personal finance. Okay, and as far as, as Jim said, referring to your CPAs or attorneys are always important. However, a good realtor should be able to address a lot of your issues, at least on the surface. As far as,
Can we mention that you're a recovering banker also?
yeah.
Just wanted to get that full disclosure.
Yeah, banking was a lot of fun. I did it for a long time, but I've never had as much fun as I have as helping with what we do. And quite frankly, a large percentage of what we do is in the senior community. And it's very different than a lot of other people who are maybe buying their first home or upgrading because of family needs. So there's a lot more to take into consideration when you are at this stage. And hopefully we'll bring a little clarity for you today on that. With that, we're going to show you a short little video, and hopefully you'll find it entertaining.
We were there 15 years.
I lived there for 23 years.
52 years.
Probably about 16 years.
We were in our home in Ridgeview Hills for over 48 years.
Downsizing is, as everybody knows, is not an easy thing to do. And so we needed one part of our life to be easy and not have to worry about it. And that was the Kiker team.
Coming here when I did, which my children thought was too early, I was able to take advantage of all the things that are offered.
I think it's important to make the move so you can still enjoy your quality of life.
The biggest hurdle of all was, what do we do with the stuff?
I didn't want my boys in there deciding what was important for me to take. And I didn't want them to tell me where they wanted me to live. I wanted to do this by myself.
We got lots and lots of help from the people that work at retirement centers.
Do not hesitate to ask family and friends to help you, because you can't do it all by yourself.
I needed a little bit of hand-holding because this was a big big move for us.
You have to be prepared. You have to start early. And you also need to future focus and think about what are you going to be able to do in 5 to 10 years? Where do you want to be? What's the best place for you?
About 2 o'clock that we made the decision, and by 11 o'clock that night, everything was in place. The team that Jim had together was amazing, and so we knew it was ours.
I thought there might be a change when I moved here, but my life, the only way my life has changed is by having more friends, more comforts, not having to cook.
You never have that feeling, oh gosh, did we do the right thing? Is this the right group? Are they doing what we need them to do? There was never that question in our mind.
Hey, thank you very, very much to all of you.
We don't have any commercials in here. So. And there's nothing fancy today.
So I want you to just think a little bit about what you're wanting to get out of today. You know, what your individual needs are. Hopefully we'll touch on something that will help with that. And then feel free to share and something that may help the collective group as well. You know, it's as referenced in the video, there's a lot to consider, from the financial to the socialization to is it the right time, and it's unique to yourself. There's not one answer that we get to say, here is this magic sauce and this will solve everything for you. That's not the case. It's very individualized, and we will have some information along the way. And then at the end, for those who are interested, we have a brochure that helps you think about things that maybe you didn't even take into consideration. And it's really thought-provoking, and that's the whole idea there. So with that being said, we're going to introduce our panelists and let them share a little bit about their experiences and over the past couple of years since they made these decisions to make such a leap. Maybe see if we get the microphone stretched out over there. Yep. Here, let me just say thank you.
I need to set the microphone over here so the camera will also pick up and we can hear them. Also want to mention that Rev Barb Scholas is with us today over here in the pink sweater, and she is our outreach to the retirement communities from St. Andrew. And she tells me there are 100 approximately St. Andrew members at Windcrest, the largest retirement center in the Denver area, or at least in our area. So I thought that was an interesting number, and she runs a Bible study there as well as Holly Creek Outreach and others. Okay, Don, tell us briefly, please, about your experience.
No pressure.
Good morning. First thing I want to say is that there are no right answers and there's no wrong answers. That's the first thing we learned. And the fact is, most seniors wait 3 to 5 years too long before they make a decision. As I told Angie, one of the things that sometimes happen, the decision was made for you, which happened in my case. Basically, I had a biopsy of my lung, it collapsed, and our house that we were going to stay in till the very end, of course, became too much, and consequently, that kind of made the decision to do something. We looked at all the options, the rental, with food plans, we looked at Windcrest, we looked at Holly Creek, we looked at V, and all of a sudden we were informed about a cooperative, which is a little different, pretty popular in the Midwest. The facility that we bought into the company started in 1972. So they are, at the present time, they're building a couple more. There will be 12, it's 12 at the gym in the Colorado area. So they are becoming a lot more popular. The main difference in them is that we buy a share into a community and we manage our own community. And we are controlled or somewhat under the auspices of HUD. So that is a little different than if you buy into Holly Creek, Windcrest, or V. And I think we offer some of the same things, but not as much as others. We are strictly independent living. We do have quite a few activities. And it's pretty much run by the people that live there. So I think that's probably about the most I could say about it. Jim can probably tell you a lot more about the ins and the outs.
Where is the village cooperative too?
It's located at 6620 South Potomac Street in Centennial. At the corner of Arapahoe Road and Potomac Street.
What?
Linda?
Do these co-ops have continuous care?
No, ma'am. These are strictly independent living.
Okay.
We kind of looked at it and determined that we wanted to roll the dice.
Okay. So you'd have to make a second move.
Correct.
Ron, talk a little bit. Go ahead, Ron, hold it up close.
Thank you, Steve. I'm Ron Grout.
With Angie here.
Does that work again?
Yep, there you go. I see that. Hold it close and talk loud.
Okay. We were owners of a home for about, what, 12 to 14 years in Highlands Ranch. Yes. Yes, we were in three different locations, actually. We moved to our retirement community in the end of 2019, before COVID hit, and we're glad for that.
And you're at Windcrest?
We're at Holly Creek.
Holly Creek, I'm sorry. Yes, Holly Creek.
And we were waiting on the home to be sold before we committed to going into retirement community. By the way, Holly Creek is a community, a retirement community that has, it's run by the Reformed Church of Indiana, I think. That's Reformed Church. And it's a CLC, is a nonprofit Christian living community. And if people are interested in that type of offering, they have a lot of offerings spiritual wise, but it's not specific to one religion. We live in independent living. We actually moved twice. We moved into an interim apartment waiting for a cottage to open. And then we moved again where we wanted to be. We moved in the weekend before COVID shut everything down into the cottage. So it gave us some time to get settled. I think it was a good move for us from a standpoint. Maybe it was a little bit early because I was still working, and one thing I would probably recommend to some retirees, it's individual, and that is to maybe retire before you move. In our case anyway, because if you're still working and you're moving, you have a lot to do. And you're kind of trying to divide your time. That was my case. I worked until the end of June last year. And I guess it was 22, yeah. So we were from 19 to 22 and I was still employed in dentistry at that point. And I think one of the things is that it's important to take a lot of activities with you that have recreation and interest. I happen to be in the choir at St. Andrew. I'm in a men's barbershop quartet at Holly Creek. It's a lot of fun, and we just made our first performance this fall. There are some limitations, and the countdown to the move is really important to do. Maybe I can let Angie talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I think it's really important to take your time and start 5 to 10 years early. Because it's a really tough process. And everyone I talk to has said that it's really difficult, and many of you already know that because you're in another community. But it's really important to look around and think about what it is that you're really searching for. One of the things that was important to me was to have a continuing care community, because once you retire, you don't know what's gonna happen, and things happen fast. And we've been at Holly Creek for 4 years. And we've seen lots of changes. And one of the things I wasn't expecting was to realize how much loss is in the community. You have to realize that we're all getting older and we're gonna be losing friends. And it's even more, I don't know, more, I'm trying to think of a word. Well, it happens more often when you're in a retirement community because that's the population. And so that's something that I was not expecting. But the other thing that I really appreciate is that the people in the community are just wonderful. I think that's the main thing that I love about the community are the people and the common interests that we share. And because it is the same demographic group, I think we're all supportive of each other. I think that's how we grew up. And it's just a wonderful group of people. And so that's what I really love about where we are. But I also think it's important to know that you're not always going to be able to be in independent living, most likely. And so you're going to need to go to assisted living at one point in your life if you have a very long life, and then possibly memory care. So it's important to be able to have all of those resources on the same campus. And when we got there, for instance, Ron slipped on the ice and he ended up in the hospital in the ICU. And after we had moved to Holly Creek. And so it was really important that I could just go down the hall and be with him as he recovered from a very serious concussion. And he was able to return to independent living, but one never knows. So that kind of gives you a different perspective, hopefully.
Angie, didn't Ron miss his own move-in party?
What?
Didn't Ron miss his own move-in party?
Oh my gosh, yes.
I thought.
We had a neighborhood move-in party that we had planned. And it was right after Thanksgiving, and he fell 2 days before Thanksgiving. And he was still in the ICU, but we carried on with our party.
This scary reminder, it wasn't at home.
Okay, microphone back to Jim. While I'm doing that, Jim, let me ask you a question. Should everyone look at all of the options they have for retirement living, including aging in their own home, moving in with children or other seniors, I've heard is an option, and retirement independent and assisted living? How do you go about evaluating all those options?
That's a very good point. The more information you get sooner than later is better. And you can visit, I'm sure you've got a lot of friends that you have talked to who have made moves or who say that they're not leaving their home unless they go feet first. I hear that every once in a while.
But the reality of it is, that may sound convenient because you got a lot, we've all had a lot of stuff to get rid of. And the reality of it is, none of our kids or friends want our stuff. For some reason, I don't know why. In fact, you know, on occasion, I've been known to put stuff in my kids' cars. Some time ago, my daughter got convinced she needed to lock her car when it was on the driveway. For multiple reasons. You know, the more you can engage your friends, family members, anybody that offers to help, do not ever turn them down. Even if they're bad help and they may have some things that you don't agree with them on, listen to their ideas. Now, one of the examples I could share with you was in my particular case. My wife was, I think I'll start this. It's okay.
My wife was married to me for a long time. actually 51 years, but I was out looking at houses all the time. And every time I'd look at a house, I think, well, that's got a main floor study. We could convert. In fact, the house that we bought in Highlands Ranch years ago had a main floor study. And our plan was, if something happened, I broke a leg or something, we could just set up a cot downstairs. There was a 3/4 bath. And I thought, boy, that's pretty smart. Well, that worked okay for a while, but it's not a long-term fix or situation. But Diane and I decided when we heard about the village cooperative, and to me, it checked all the boxes at that point in time. We were looking for more of a lock and leave chapter of our life. And at that point, that was several years ago, and she was pretty adamant that she would reluctantly go and take a look at it. And she kept saying, now remember, we're not gonna sign anything. And I said, yeah, that's right, we're not gonna sign anything. When we heard how it fit and checked all the boxes for us, it wound up being a situation. She was saying, well, I'd like that unit on the 3rd floor. And that's where we wound up committing to purchase an interest in the village cooperative, and it's worked real well. I still use it as our lock and leave chapter. So that's one concept, but the more you talk to your friends, and we decided that we would make the decision ourselves, and then we told our kids about it. And because we didn't want them picking out our home that we were going to be moving into and all that, but that's just one example. I think the other thing is that I helped move my aunt here from Kansas City, Missouri. She had never been married. She was a retired school teacher, and she moved here. And I thought it always would be a very challenging thing for her to leave her friends in Kansas City. She had lost so many friends that she felt there were more advantages for her to move into Christian living communities at Sommer and Glen. Now, some of you have probably been there before, but it's a very active community that's tied in with Christian living communities. She had the courage to move here at age 94. And that was my part-time job at a lot of weeks, was taking my aunt to doctor's appointments. And she was such a blessing, to be able to be around family and everything. As it turned out, she lived to be, my part-time job, she lived to be 103 and a half. And she told people all the time that this was the best chapter of her life. So, and she always said, unfortunately, she ran out of financial situation, and we were able to help her the last several years of her life. But the reality of it was also, importantly, she kept saying, well, I don't know why I'm on this earth still. And I said, Hyla, your work is not done on this earth. And she would wind up, this was one time I could tell her anything but the truth. She'd say, Jim, how's my money? I need to talk to you. And she'd say, how's my money holding there? And I'd say the same thing. Hyla, unless you start going to Las Vegas gambling, you're going to be just fine. And so those are wonderful stories that we can share as we get more information and figure out where we want to be, and sooner is better than later. Just to get your name on a list makes a world of difference. Just Friday afternoon, somebody called me, a lady from Colorado Springs, and she said, I'm in big trouble with my 2 daughters. I'd given them a tour of the building probably 8 or 10 months earlier. And I said, well, what's going on? I thought she was really in trouble. And she said, my daughters wanted me to sign up and get on the wait list, and I did not do it. What's the wait list now? It's like 35 people on the wait list. And we've had, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, I think we have had 6 people move out in a little over 2 years. So
is that typical at many of the retirement centers? They're so popular now.
oh yeah, all the baby boomers are
Yeah.
on the wait list for sure. The smart ones anyway. I didn't mean that. Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment about Sommer and Glen.
It's a Christian living center also. The big difference is that there is no upfront big deposit. So if it's a financial situation, I think the last I checked, their monthly rent was a little bit more expensive to kind of offset that, but there was no big deposit to begin with. And my mother-in-law lived there and died there, and excellent care. And remember, they have assisted living, they have full care. They also have a hospice building, a very quiet center in the corner.
Salmon Glen.
It's west of Holly on Arapahoe Road. It's behind that King Super. And it's very lovely. It's more low key, but they have a lot of activities there. But financially, it might work out for people that don't have that big deposit to put down, or they need that for something else.
That's great.
Salmon Glen.
It's the old Johnson Center.
Yeah.
It used to be the Johnson Center. Yeah.
Definitely. So anyway, that's kind of my story. I remember as a child, my grandfather, my grandmother passed away, and my grandfather sold his farm, and he wound up asking my dad one time what he ought to do. And my grandfather wanted to go another 30 or 40 miles away from where we lived. And he asked my dad and said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, I think you're making it easier on me." He said, let's get you closer to where we are. And I think that's wonderful if you can do that with kids and family and friends, things like that, instead of just being isolated somewhere. That's my story.
I'm sticking to it.
And I'm sticking to it.
Could I invite our Zoomers to ask a question or make a comment so they don't feel like they're interrupting us? If any of you have a question or comment, just go right ahead. Joyce, you have your hand up. You're muted, Joyce. Unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm curious to know who makes the financial decisions in the cooperative arrangement. Does everybody have a say if you disagree with the amount? Is it more like a condo where if the roof needs to be fixed, everybody pays $4,000 at that time?
If you're talking about the village cooperative, we have a board of directors, and we have a lot of volunteers. If I would have gone out and picked all of my friends to be in that building, I couldn't have done near as great of a job as what we did naturally. And we have attorneys, we have medical people, we have engineers in the building, and everybody kind of works together as a team. We also, the advantage of this building in particular is we have a 40-year mortgage amortization, and that really gets the payments into a more manageable way. And we do have appreciation of 3% a year. That's not anything like what we've been used to in the Colorado real estate market, but that's one of the options.
What happens when you disagree?
We have reserves. We have reserve accounts and financial people on our board.
Do people vote?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so people do vote in the
Sure.
cooperative situation, okay, to determine what's gonna happen with that. So it's a collective decision as with what your
Majority
obligations
will.
are gonna be doing. Thank you. Thank you.
So anyway, most of us in the room probably had wills at some point in time, if not already. So this is kind of similar. If you can figure out a way that you can manage yourself into the next 5 or 10 years, whatever it might be, just look on down the road, because we don't know what's around the corner. We could have health issues come up, hopefully not, but the more we can plan, the better. Oh, let's see.
Let's take the question back here while you're waiting. Sharon.
Interested in the co-op, how do you cover maintenance on the inside? Because I live in a condo right now. And I cover my own inside, but I don't do the outside. So what happens in the villages or a co-op?
We have all the common areas are maintained a couple of times a week in the building, and all the landscaping and so on outside, and people use different cleaning companies that they used before they moved into the building. Yeah, one of the quotes I wanted to mention and here also is, Dr. Harvey Marks, from St. Andrew, years ago, I think 10 to 15 years ago, did a sermon series entitled, "If Change is So Good, You Go First." I have quoted that to many people over the years. So anyway, that's.
Lowell has a question.
Lowell?
So my limited knowledge is there's two basic models. One is a buy-in where you sell your house and then buy into like Windcrest. And the other is simply going and renting. So can I get some pros and cons for each of those models?
That's the great question. I think once you go visit the communities, you'll have a lot more awareness of, I'm not trying to evade the question whatsoever, but everybody has different priorities and their comfort level can be most important. Some people may not have the resources financially for some of the more extensive services and things like that. But didn't answer that thoroughly, but that's where if you go visit the communities, and I'm hopeful that we can line up some possible tours of different buildings if people here would have any interest. These places all like to sell their story to the people that might be interested in getting on a wait list. No obligation on anybody's part whatsoever.
Well, one of the things that Holly Creek has that's really quite unique is that it's a lifetime contract. This is it. I mean, pretty extensive. And
For
so-
those that couldn't hear, she said Holly Creek has a lifetime contract.
Life care contract. And so that means that after you put you do have to be accepted, but after you put your money down, then you are assured that they will take care of you till the end of your life. And if you run out of resources, they will still take care of your needs at the level that you need to be at. So, this is very unique. I'm not sure, but I don't think there's any other community in the Denver area that provides this kind of written contract.
So if anybody didn't hear on Zoom too, she said that Holly Creek provides care even if you run out of money until the end of your life, which is kind of an unusual, unique situation among retirement centers.
Doesn't Windcrest do that too?
They say they do, but I don't think they do.
They check your finances before they allege.
I do know that Windcrest has a fund that is funded by the residents as well, that if there are money issues, and residents are having issues, running out of money, that there is a benevolence fund that you can go to at Windcrest. So it's maybe not quite the same thing, but there are ways to still continue to stay there.
And we still have that too. We also have.
Yeah.
And they do at Summer and Glen as well.
Yeah.
They'll work with people.
Hey, Steve?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Doug.
For those units are centers that folks have gone to, the progressive care side of it, they tout that they have, care for sick, care for Alzheimer's, etc. I have talked to people whereby they're in their units and the care center is simply not available because of the demand being placed by the residents. And so they have to go elsewhere. So for those of you that are in those kind of centers whereby they state there is progressive care, have you found difficulty in securing that extended care?
He said some places don't have space when you need it for extended care. Just too much demand.
And then you have to go on your own nickel.
No,
No.
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 I can't see that. So they're obligated to find another place for you to live. Okay, so there will be continuous care, but you're going to get moved to another facility. And they actively look for places that are of same quality as your current facility. And so they make a big deal out of this. And the problem, when you really think about it, is that there's no way that anybody can predict demand. Out of the general population, how many people are gonna go towards memory care, how many people are gonna need, full assisted living, that kind of circumstance. And that's with what the nature of what they're doing. So they're looking overall for the collective pool for what happens. And then it is more expensive for them to do this. So immediately, as soon as they have space, then the first people that they take are the people they've already placed elsewhere. Okay, and to try to grab that money, the revenue, they're gonna try to always grab their revenue. Which is to your advantage, because then they're back on your same campus again, which is what we've heard is a tremendous advantage.
Thanks for covering that as well as you did.
Jim?
Yes.
I just want to say at Solomon Glen, my mother-in-law is an independent living. She needed to go to assisted living and there was no place. And they continued to care for her in independent living until a place opened up in assisted living, which was it wasn't very long. It was like 3 or 4 weeks, and then she was placed into assisted living. So I think most of these units probably do that, but it's my guess that for a short period of time, they can take care of you in your independent living or your assisted if you need to go to full care.
No, that's correct, I'm sure. Sam?
So in addition to all the facilities that we've talked about, CLC has another community, Claremont Park, up off of like Evans, just west of 25, and that's another great facility. And then there are other types of places that you can buy into that aren't continuing care along the process, but like your Heather Gardens or Windsor Gardens facilities over in Aurora. I actually just purchased one in Heather Gardens earlier this year, and my mother-in-law is living there now. And the plan is that she'll live there as long as she can live there. And then when it's time for my wife and I, we're gonna move in there. And it's a lock and leave scenario. And it was relatively inexpensive. I mean, when you look at a lot of the prices, a lot of things out there, it's a 1,000 square foot, 1 bedroom facility, but we bought it for a little over $200,000. And the property taxes are almost nothing, but there's no continuing care. They don't have a medical staff there for you. It's a more of an active senior community, but there's not a 35-person waiting list to get in there either. If you want to go by there are plenty of places. They're always kind of available. So again, there's a lot of different opportunities that exist out there. So I don't want you to get discouraged when you hear about these waiting lists to get into places. There are other options. With that, I'm going to go over a couple slides here. A lot of you have the handout, which matches the slides. It's just 3 slides, but it's kind of touching on Jim's comment about change. So remember, change can be a good thing. It can be. Most times it is. And actually, I was reading these, I don't know if you read these stories about like the blue zones, places in the world that people live to be over 100. I actually took it a step further and read about the people and how their personal philosophies in life. And the number one thing across all categories across the world is those who are willing to accept change and how they deal with change is the most pervasive mindset. So I thought that was always interesting, as well as the different recipes and what have you. So at the top here, it says how seniors sell smarter to live better. You know, I was just thinking about a lady that we helped several years ago who really, her dream was to move to Holly Creek. And she met with them and they asked financial information. And she didn't really understand her own finances. And she had been in her condo downtown Denver, 888 Logan Street. I vividly remember this for many, many years. And she was so frustrated. And we did a seminar there maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And afterwards she came to me, she asked me for my phone number, and then she called me. And I went down to her condo and she was a bit of a acquirer of things. So the condo was. Well utilized, the space. And I asked her to gather all her financial information, and this is where I was able to leverage my background in banking. And we spent 2 days going through her finances, and then we went back to Holly Creek. And they said, oh, yeah, you qualify. And she moved in maybe a month and a half, 2 months later. It was so understanding your resources and how to best leverage them for what you need to accomplish. Again, there's a multitude of places and options, be it moving with family. We've had people who sell their homes and finish out their children's basements or part of their house and move in with them. And then they both sides benefit from that. So, I mean, there's a lot of different paths to success. Your home is one of your most valuable assets. And as Jim referenced a little while ago, home prices in the Denver area have appreciated significantly. And this year, again, even though you're hearing on the news about prices are down and all that, just relatively speaking, correctly, unfortunately, my daughter had to buy a new car a couple of years ago, and they were charging a premium above MSRP. So they took the window sticker price, laughed at it, and added $5,000, $10,000 to it. So the premium was on that. The same thing existed in the housing market here. People were paying $10, $20, $30, $100,000 over asking price. Well, those premiums have gone away, just like they have on the cars. Now houses are actually selling for about value, which is kind of nice. And that value continues to increase. We're expecting around a 4% plus increase in 2023, and next year they're expecting about the same. So, the housing market, you could read what you want in the news, but the reality behind it is that inflated premium is gone. Interest rates are up higher, but that was artificially lowered due to financial circumstances going all the way back to 2008 and 9 with the collapse of the marketplace. And then with COVID, they had to suppress it yet further. So the rates of being gone, crazy low are gone, which is slowing down the market. But, back in my business school days, 7% was like the golden number. That's where you want to be.
I just want to say, when we moved in 1981 to Columbus, Ohio, the interest rates were 18.75%.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
7%.
For that time. So,
You're exactly right. People were, when I was buying my first home, 7%, we had to pay a premium to get the 7% rate, and we were thrilled to get it. Now people are complaining about it. So, keep that in mind. So here's some stats, and you should have this in your flyers as well. But we look at inventory, and to be in a balanced market where buyers and sellers are equally balanced out, it's about 6 months of inventory, meaning that if no new houses came to the market, it would take 6 months to complete all the inventory. Well, right now we have 2.2 months of inventory. Now that's up because, early last year, there was like 3 weeks of inventory. So it's definitely, increased, but it's still significantly lower than it should be. And I'm gonna kind of encapsulate this and summarize this. Days on market still is roughly just under 3 weeks. So houses are still selling relatively quickly. If it's a nice home in a nice desirable area that's priced accordingly, it's going to sell. That's just the reality. There are about 7,000 houses on the market right now here in Denver as of Thursday of last week. That's not much. We should have somewhere north of 20,000 homes on the market at this point. So when you put in those kind of terms, you say, wow. The 2.2, right now there are 10,500 showings in the last week in Denver. So if you take all the houses that are on the market, and put out there and add up all those different showings, it's taking about, I think it says 14 showings to get somebody's house under contract. Again, if the house is overpriced or in a bad area relative to whatever people's perception is, and it's maybe not as clean as it could be, it may take a little longer. But a nice home priced well will sell quickly. So the asset that you sit on, if you are a homeowner, is a valuable, important asset. And then it's just what you decide to do with it, what path you want to take. And one of the things we're trying to get across here is there's no one path. Just even with moving to a senior living, and there's many that we didn't even mention. I mean, there's so many. It's just, what is your desire? Do you want to go to that, make one more move? And I love what some of the comments that have been said, and I just want to reiterate them. You're in a position where you can hopefully make that decision for yourself. So often we hear from clients, oh, I wish I would have done this sooner. And I'm not trying to be contrary to what was said earlier about waiting until retirement. I think it's up to you and what your desire is, but the overwhelming response we get from people is we waited too long. You know, I'll be 56 next month, so I'm a little bit younger than some.
You're a youngster.
But I was saying, you know, that's the purchase in Heather Gardens for me is my longer term play. And it just worked out well that my mother-in-law, I felt that she'd be more comfortable not living in my home. So.
You're a diplomat.
Yeah. So, well, when I was in law school, they teach you to talk that way. So, again, there's different paths to get there to success, and hopefully we'll bring a little bit of clarity through these discussions.
But you do want to sell the farm before you buy the farm.
Yes, exactly, yeah, exactly. My grandmother used to have this needlepoint thing she made, that said, she said, go first class, your heirs will.
Could I ask a question? How many folks in here are interested in a retirement home that you're pretty sure you're interested in moving there versus staying in your own home? How many are interested in moving? About half maybe of our group here. How many are committed to staying in your home, aging in place? About another half. We're about half and half. Is that typical of groups, population?
It's probably, yeah, I would say roughly 50% or so. And, you know, that's interesting because one of the things that we're going to hand out to y'all, if you'd like it, is just a newsletter. But our key article for our fall newsletter was, does your home need a checkup? Just like all of us go to the doctor, you know, well, we should at least go to the doctor for a checkup to make sure that we're doing well, because repairs maintenance are so much less expensive than repairs. And that holds true for our bodies, it holds true for our homes. So if you are planning on staying in place, make sure your home is solid, make sure that it's healthy. We recommend getting a home inspector as if you were going to go buy a new home or develop a home, and spend a few $100s, have them come check the house from the very top of the roof to the lowest point in the basement, and give you a full checkup, full blood count of your house, and see how it stands. Because if you are planning on staying there, again, those maintenance items are so much less expensive. A new furnace and HVAC system right now could easily run, close to $10,000. But if you 12,000, I mean, they're expensive, and some homes have two of each. So, you need to really look at that and say, okay, well, maybe you get somebody to come out there and clean and check it out for $79. You'll start seeing those commercials on TV now. Spend the $79 or $99 and get it serviced, tuned up, clean. It's going to prolong the life of those vital systems for your home.
I have a very direct question for you three. And it's directly related to my mom about what happened with her. My mother was adamant about staying in her home. And then something happened and she was ready to move tomorrow. Would you describe what your circumstance was and how you arrived at it? Was it something that was almost immediate, or was it something that was much more organic and came over time?
Yeah, you got it. My process was kind of forced on me in some respects. I had COPD. But it turned out in 2018, I was playing golf and ended up getting double pneumonia. And so they took x-rays and determined that I had a spot and should have a biopsy. Biopsy was negative, but my lung collapsed. So I consequently ended up losing about 25% capacity. So at that point, it was pretty obvious that there were things I couldn't do with the house anymore. We did have landscaping, and up until that time, I was still doing snow blowing. The hardest thing we found was trying to find somebody to take care of the snow. A lot of them will come after the snow quits, but maybe you want to leave your house before then. So that's a problem. Cost became very prohibitive. And then I got really tired of hiring somebody to do something that would take me 15 minutes and $10, and they were charging me $200. So that becomes a factor after a while. And that's was how it worked with me. So it was a little drawn out a little bit. And I had the biopsy in January of 2019. We went to the co-op meeting in August of 2019. And I think we ended up signing our check in about October of 2019. So it was a little longer process.
In our case, it was a little bit different. I chose to continue working because I had a passion for my job. And I was in good health and physically able to do it. And I think we probably moved a little bit earlier than I had to. And maybe Angie chose to do the same. However, we thought it was in our best interest for long term and to get rid of the big house. And there was an increasing maintenance issue and a lot of yard work and all that. I chose not to do all that. So that kind of precipitated some of it too. It's been a good thing after the fact, although I wasn't sure I was ready to do it to begin with. But since we've been there, I think it was really, in retrospect, it was the right thing to do.
And I think it was the right thing to do also. I had a situation where my father had to get out of his apartment due to a situation that was kind of humorous, but not really. He had very low vision and he was in an apartment for over 55 people and he really couldn't see very well at all. And unfortunately, he decided to put paper towels in the oven of the kitchen and store them in there. Of course, I didn't know it. And because he couldn't see, he brushed up against the temperature control and it started to simmer and it started to smoke, which resulted in a fire alarm going off and everybody in the building had to be evacuated. So there were no injuries, no one was hurt. It was very difficult for him to go down the stairs because he couldn't see and they can't use the elevators. But it was very embarrassing and humiliating to him. And so then he had an immediate need to find an alternative. And he did go to Summer and Glen and he stayed at Summer and Glen for 2 years. And then he was able to transition to the hospice on the campus, which is Porter Hospice. And so